One of the great conservation tools that a lot of organizations use is the fact that you can adopt an animal. You can donate to protecting a specific animal, maybe for rehabilitation or just protecting them by the organization doing more research or doing more policy on it or more advocacy for that animal. And you can say, hey, you know what? I've actually contributed to adopting a sea turtle, a whale, a dolphin, a shark, what have you. Well, now you can actually commit and donate and support to protecting a square kilometer of ocean for the island of Niue in the South Pacific. It's quite the amazing thing to do, and I think it's going to be a huge game changer. And we're going to talk about it today with Brendon Pasisi and Mael Imirizaldu on today's podcast to talk about ocean conservation commitments for the island of Niue and see how much of a game changer it is. We're going to talk about that on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you could speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today, we are having sort of like all of it today. All the protection, how you can protect the ocean, how you can speak up for it, and as well of what's happening in the ocean. Because I've got two special guests today. I've got Brendon Pasisi, who is the island of Niue's project manager for the Nuie Ocean-wide project. And I'll also be talking to Mael Imirizaldu, who is the regional leader for the Pacific region for the Blue Nature Alliance, which we actually had Mael on the podcast a number of years ago, actually about 2 years ago, when we talked about the launch of the Blue Nature Alliance. And that is, if you want to go back to the episode, I'll put the episode link in the show notes. But essentially, the Blue Nature Alliance is an alliance of nonprofit organizations and governments and local leaders around the world to put in more marine protected areas, work with local stakeholders to put those marine protected areas in and protect more of the ocean. And so it's part of the 30 by 30 project. And today we're going to be speaking with both of these men, Brendon and Mael, to discuss the new Ocean Conservation Commitments program for the island of Niue, which is a small island in the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by Fiji and a number of other islands, and it's self-governed, but it's still attached to the governing body of New Zealand. It's a really interesting island, population 1,700 people, and they want to protect their ocean. And not only do they want to protect the ocean, they are protecting the ocean, and they are smashing the 30 by 30. They've already protected 40% of the ocean, and now they're trying to make sure that they're protecting it for the long term. They've come out with this program called Ocean Conservation Commitments, and in my opinion, it is a game changer. So without further ado, here is Brendon and Mael talking about Ocean Conservation Commitments with me. Enjoy the interview, and I will speak to you after. Brendon, Mael, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about ocean conservation commitments?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thanks for having us, Andrew.
Yes, absolutely, Andrew.
That is wonderful. I love the concept of ocean conservation commitments, and we're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into sort of the Blue Nature Alliance and how, Mael, you've been on this podcast before through that project where we did a number of interviews on what the Blue Nature Alliance is, and we'll go over it again just to give people who weren't able to listen to that podcast. I'll link to it in the show notes, but weren't able to listen to that episode so they can kind of refresh themselves and get to know what the Blue Nature Alliance is, and of course, how this project kind of came out of that, and why it's so important, why I'm so excited about this project, and why I think the people who are listening should be excited about this project as well, kind of giving us a little bit of empowerment in conservation, which I love. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Before we get into all of that, though, Brendon, why don't we start with you? Why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, okay. So thank you, Andrew. And it's really great to be here with you and joining you and Mael this morning. Really excited about this. So my name is Brendon Pasisi. So I'm the project manager for the Niue Ocean-wide project, which is a public-private partnership between the government of Niue and a small conservation NGO, non-profit called Tofia Niue, which stands for ocean, Nuie Ocean. So yeah, it's I'm really happy to be here with you and Mael, and yeah, I also help to manage through that project Entropy Nuie, the Blue Nature Alliance project that's helping Nuie set up our sustainable financing mechanism for ocean conservation.
Hi, Andrew and Brendon. Very glad to be back on your podcast. I really love it, and I am looking forward for this conversation today, which is very exciting. We've been working on that for the last 2 or 3 years, so you can imagine that we are very relieved and happy to see this coming as a reality. So yeah, my name is Mael Imirizaldu. I'm from New Caledonia. I'm the regional lead for the Pacific region for the Blue Nature Alliance. And if you wonder what is the Blue Nature Alliance, we are an initiative that actually brings together 5 core partners, which are Conservation International, the Pew Charitable Trust, the Global Environmental Facility, GEF, Minderu Foundation, and Walton Foundation. And together, back in 2019, 2020, those organizations came together to support governments, their local partners, traditional leaders, and others to their ocean conservation journey. And so we support large-scale conservation efforts and support the management effectiveness of those large-scale conservation. And so we work across the globe, but in the Pacific, we have a couple of geographies and partnership, and Nuie is a very, very interesting one. So looking forward to talk about it more.
Yeah, and we did talk about Niue as an island, and why it's so important and why it's so unique in its interest in the last podcast we did. But Brendon, can you kind of give us just a refresher of sort of a context of the island of Niue and sort of what it is, where it's a part of, where it is in the Pacific, and just kind of give an idea of conservation efforts in the past, as well as just sort of the people. Just give us a little bit of background on the island itself, if that's okay.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so Niue is one of probably the 3 largest single uplifted coral atolls in the world. It's roughly 100 square miles or 260 square kilometers. A single rock uplifted out of the ocean in sort of 3 terraces. The first terrace is obviously at reef level. Then there's a sort of 20 meter above sea level terrace, and then the upper terrace is essentially 45, 50 plus meters above sea level. It's quite flat. Across the top of it had like an old lagoon in the center where you often find many fossils and things like that. Yeah, so cool. It's a great little island, has 14 villages spread around the periphery of that. And it has a population of just 1,700 people, residents. Of those, maybe 1,100 100% Nuians. We are located between sort of Tonga, the Cook Islands, and Fiji. So in between those 3 there, and Samoa, we're in that little group way down in the South Pacific Ocean. We're surrounded by ocean, obviously, and have an ocean real estate of about 340,000 square kilometers, and that's what we're looking at doing. All Niueans, we have a strong constitutional relationship with New Zealand, so we are all New Zealand citizens by birth, but we regard ourselves as indigenous native Niueans. We have our own language, we have our own culture here. But yeah, Niue was annexed to New Zealand in 1901, and we are self-governed. So we rely on New Zealand only for defense, and we have a relationship that requires us to consult with them when entering into political partnerships with other countries. But otherwise, we are independent and self-governed in that regard.
I love it. I remember learning about Niue last time we had on the podcast, and it's such an interesting island. The size, where it is, the interesting relationship with New Zealand, but so much ocean real estate in front of it. You mentioned upwards of 340,000 square meters or square kilometers, of ocean real estate. It's a lot to manage. There's a population that's on there. What you said, I believe it was about 1,700. Are they very? Is the population very conservation friendly? Are they very aware of the importance of having a protected area or a number of protected areas around the ocean? Like what is the general consensus around protecting the ocean around the island of Niue?
So I think just first by way of context, so Niue is 3,000 kilometers from New Zealand. So just to give people a bit of perspective around how far away we are. But yeah, just on that front, yes, I think, if you look back in our history and our culture, there's a great sense of respect for the ocean and the provision. Niueans are very much a Christian country, and they have great respect for the provision of resources to us, and so I think a good litmus test of that was when we presented back the first findings from the Pristine Seas expedition, and there was just overwhelming support. There was 101% support for a large-scale marine protected area, and that's largely offshore. So we've done a lot over the years. There've been many different conservation-oriented projects, environmental projects that have educated the people. But conservation and management is enshrined, and you can see it embedded in the customary practices of looking after areas. We have tapus that can be put on an area of the ocean or sea. The coastal area stops people from going there for up to a year. Those sorts of things. So that exists. Having said that, of course, we're all humans, and human nature is one that hunters and gatherers, as time has gone on and technologies have improved, the ability and striving for a more Western standard of living is what has created some of the pressures, I think, now that we have to actually put some of these protections, conservation measures in place, so that we can keep up with the times, as it were, and ensure that we are not overusing the carrying capacity of our natural resources and environment. Climate change on top of that, and building resilience into our management is also critical, and that's where the project comes in.
Okay. Now, you mentioned some of those pressures. Can you give an idea of what pressures are facing, the surrounding ocean for the island?
Okay, so I think in terms of climate change, obviously, increasing the ocean temperature. We're seeing more coral bleaching. There's ocean acidification. Some of these large things that are sort of beyond our control, but we can make a very credible and useful contribution towards through our conservation efforts. Mael already mentioned us exceeding the 30 by 2030 target of marine protected areas. So we're proud of that, and we'll continue to build on that. If we are successful in all of our efforts with the B&A project and other partners, we'll be, we are already a leader in this ocean conservation space globally. So, although we're small, we can make our contribution. And so I think those pressures, and then building economic development in the blue economy includes things like tourism. We just need to make sure that supporting a sustainable level of tourism doesn't lead to increased exploitation of some of the marine resources to help support visitors and stuff coming in here, making sure that we don't over harvest. We need to make sure that the number of visitors doesn't have a negative impact on the environment. So yeah, it's a unique little place, and we need to keep it as pristine as possible.
Let me just add on what Brendon, on what Brendon says, that something that, so in the early conversation also, what I understood from Nuie is that one thing to keep in mind is that you have much more traditional fishers, going on canoe out there and trying to catch big fish, but it's getting harder and harder. You've got the climate change, and so like strong weathers and cyclones and other things that actually impact the island. But something that is also much more underlining, and maybe that ties to this effort and the work that we've done together, is the fact that population, again, is like 1700s of people. And so like a lot of small islands, you've got it's kind of difficult to retain people on the island, and the yacht tends to go out, to New Zealand, the US, to Samoa, to other places, in the region, to seek for work, to seek for other opportunities. And so, in ocean conservation, it's always like the workforce, the people that actually do that. And so you can have like, on top of all those challenges, environmental challenges, when you miss the local capacity, the workforce, and the skill sets, of people to actually get on the work and support ocean conservation efforts, it's getting very, very hard actually to deliver and to actually sort every issue that you can face on the island. So that's something that was very much also underlying as a very big challenge that struck me when engaging with Brendon and Coral, who are and others who are a very small team of champions, but again, a very small team compared to the big challenges that they have and that they're facing.
Yeah. No, definitely something that, that has to be considered when we get into that. And I think it's kind of interesting, Brendon, you mentioned, you guys beat the 30 by 30 measure already. I think you pretty much smashed that sort of minimum value. Can you talk about sort of how much is protected right now around the island of Niue, and when those protections came in, where you exceeded that 30 by 30?
Yeah. Okay. So very quickly, so back in 2016. We undertook the expedition Niue with Pristine Seas. We did the baseline survey, comprehensive survey of Niue and one of our offshore reefs, Beveridge Reef, which it's about 125 nautical miles offshore. It's the jewel in the crown for Niue, and it's sort of like a little bit of a conservation bank because it's well protected. It's not exposed to fishing pressure either by the local population. It's a closed area for any historical fishing licenses for industrial longliners in particular. That sits inside the marine protected area, and it's a special management area itself. I think the decision then to move to protecting 40% was pretty easy. We were able to very easily convince our local people here because it sits offshore. It doesn't immediately impact people. But as I think Mael had talked about, the fishing is getting tougher now for, and just to give you a little bit of context, we have maybe 20 or 30 little aluminium fishing boats that range from sort of 12 feet in length to maybe 7 meters, and they are launched and retrieved every day. No vessels sit out in the ocean here because of its exposure. And then the artisanal canoe, traditional canoe fishermen, they carried their canoes single-handedly and launched them off the sort of the reef edge. And there's probably about 80 to 100 sort of small one-man outrigger canoes, and it's pretty amazing the skill that they have. But yeah, so all of the food security and subsistence fishing is right adjacent to the island because it drops away really, really deep, really quickly. And so you could be 500 meters offshore and in 1,000 meters of water. So yeah, it's open Southern Ocean. So people generally don't venture too far out past 2 nautical miles. But yeah, so 3 nautical miles is where it all happens for the local population. And then this larger protection further out will hopefully address some of those issues around hopefully resident stocks of pelagic highly migratory species.
Do you ever have pressures coming from outside the island, like fishing fleets from outside the island coming in and fishing on those offshore areas where it might be difficult to monitor, on a regular basis?
Yeah, there's always the possibility of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, or IUU. But we are linked into intergovernmental regional MCS framework, which provides for the use of vessel monitoring systems, for aerial surveillance aircraft to go over. We have trialed satellite tracking. We're a partner with Global Fish Watch, which use AIS and stuff like that. So, and we also have arrangements which the government is a part of that undertake operations where all those assets and technologies come together, usually once or twice a year. And that includes patrol vessels from neighboring countries to come in. So there's a significant level there. We have also trialed new technologies like drones for nearshore and fixed-wing drones for offshore. Gigapan cameras hooked up with hydrophones. We can't support a large patrol vessel as we don't have a sort of safe and secure harbor. But we are using all the sort of emerging technologies that make it very hard now for any sort of traditionally known as pirate vessels just to sneak in under the guise of the protection of darkness. That doesn't sort of happen anymore.
Well, that's good. That's nice to hear because it's a difficult thing to do, and I know it's been challenging over the years. Now, obviously, technology, you mentioned drones and satellite imagery has become much more readily available, and I think that's really important. Now, let's get into the ocean conservation commitments. And I don't know who we should start with. Maybe Brendon, when we start with you, and then Mael, you can kind of talk about how the idea. Because Brendon, I understand that you came up with the idea of ocean conservation commitments. Is that correct?
Well, I think I have to pass the credit and kudos on to my sister for that. She's the okay. Coral Pasisi. She's the president of Tofia Nuie, and it was her brainchild. She came up with the concept, but we have certainly all of us contributed towards that along the way. But yes, of course, very much she deserves the credit for that.
So why don't you just kind of give a definition of what the OCC is, just so the audience can understand and why it kind of came up.
So the Ocean Conservation Commitment essentially is a calculation based on the sort of the cost of helping to manage 1 square kilometer of ocean and the benefits that accrue from that. And it's based on several value dimensions, including ecological, climate change, socioeconomical, the scale or size of the area under protection, and the strength of the governance that's applied to it. And so we made some calculations of what it costs to actually enforce. We've talked about enforcement now and compliance. The building capacity within the fisheries, compliance organization, for example, and that equated to somewhere in the vicinity of $19.50 New Zealand dollars per year per square kilometre of ocean space. And so of that, the Niue government for the last 20 or 30 years has already invests $7 to $8 to try and cover that ocean space. So that's what the small government as a small independent state could cover. And so essentially the remainder of that $19.50 is around $12.50 per square kilometre per year. We've then multiplied that by 20 years because the government has also agreed to locking up that large-scale marine protected area at least for 20 years, but hopefully in perpetuity.
Right.
Yeah. So if you multiply $12.50 by 20 years, that's where you get 250 New Zealand dollars per ocean conservation commitment, or in US dollars, that's 148 US dollars, depending on the exchange rate. So that signifies that if you sponsor one ocean conservation commitment, you are helping us to manage and protect at least one square kilometre of ocean space for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. So that's essentially what you get. And because the lockup of ocean has global benefits, that's where we think it's equitable that we invite people from the international and global community to make a contribution. And this is just a really neat, and innovative way of actually doing that. And that's where the OCC was sort of born from, and also a product of having to pivot during COVID.
Yeah.
Because
yes,
up until then, our model for the sustainable financing of this whole effort and cause was based around growing tourism, the spin-offs from that, fees coming in from tourism, and then overnight we went from having a flight once a week or twice a week into Niue to no flights a week.
Right.
And then it just went from 10,000 tourists a year to 0 tourists for 2.5 years. So the pivot.
That's devastating.
Yeah. So we looked for an innovative way to get support, and that's where the OCC came in.
Now, Mael, when you heard about this idea, what was your reaction when you first heard about it?
Well, of course, like everyone, I loved it. So Brendon said it. This is a mechanism to finance ocean conservation at scale, holistically. Traditionally, when you look at the traditional donors or foundations and scheme of supporting ocean conservation, you will look at supporting climate change adaptation, or reef resilience, or people and culture and tradition, so you always have those boxes. Well, you probably heard about, let's sponsor a turtle, or you can sponsor a whale, whether you and I love turtles or whales or sharks or reef or climate or people, now you can do it all at once. That's what the OCC offers. And in this way, I loved it, because it is your and my opportunity to actually support a conservation efforts at scale in a place that actually is struggling to get, new donors and new supports. And actually, conservation practitioners, will relate to that in the fact that in your career, every couple of years, quite often, actually, you go for new proposals and new sponsorships and donations, and to finance your project. But so you spend a lot of time developing this, you spend a lot of time reporting that, you spend a lot of time tracking new donors, and that's a lot of time that you don't spend on the ground, that you don't spend doing the work that is needed. And right now we don't have the time. I mean, it's going fast. We need to act fast. And so,
or the people to do it too.
Yes, right? Yes. So what struck us when we had that first conversation with Brendon and Coral was like, hey, we need to switch from a project-based approach to something that is programmatic, something that we can program for the next 20 years, something that we don't have every now and then to run after new grants so that we can carry on. We need something that can just give us the freedom and the enabling environment for actually progressing on everything that we have to do, which is community-based engagement, which is climate resilience, which is conservation activities, monitoring and tracking, all of this. But the thing is, there is also limited capacity to spend the money. So no matter how much money you can get, if you don't have enough people on the ground and enough capacity to disburse the funding, then you're stuck. So I guess the OCC, the Ocean Conservation Commitment, is, as you said it earlier in the podcast, is that it is democratizing ocean finance, ocean conservation finance, in a way that actually brings back brings back the power in the hands of the people that actually do the job on the ground. So that's pretty much what struck me when we entered the conversation. That vision that is very innovative, but in the meantime, very much connected to the global, challenges, the regional challenges, but also very much grounded into Nuie's reality that actually a lot of other small islands or big ocean nations can relate to. So I guess that's what was the beginning of this story.
Totally agree. Both of you, I don't know about you guys, when I first got contacted by Emma about this, at first I didn't believe it. I was like, what do you mean? This is like, I equate it to, how every program that we used to see, whether it be documentaries, whether it be radio programs, they used to be on big broadcasting networks, right? Like in the US, it used to be, Fox or CBC or CNN or CBS, and Canada used to be CBC. No, and sort of the people who weren't in that business didn't have access to create, didn't have access to express how they felt. Then all of a sudden technology hits, we get podcasting, we get YouTube, and all of a sudden you get to hear the opinions of everybody, sometimes for good, sometimes maybe not for so good, but you get to hear more of the opinions, and all of a sudden that democratizes everything. But then there was okay, well, the big companies, they get all the money. They get all the advertising, they get all that. But then all of a sudden these creators came out, and we could support those creators, right? Through services like Patreon or other services where you can actually go and support a particular person or a project. Even, we have charitable foundations that are out and support specific projects that may not be part of a charitable organization, but somebody can go and spend $25 and support that project and support this. And like you said, Mael, before, you can support animals, adopt a whale, adopt a turtle. You can do that donation. You can support, and you feel good that you helped a particular animal, right? Which is awesome. But marine protected areas protect the habitat. Everything. They protect the ecosystem. So by putting money and by donating and supporting the institutions that are out there to protect that area, you are in essence protecting every animal that goes through that area. And I think that is what is so powerful about this. Somebody from the Arctic can protect a square kilometer in Niue. Somebody from Chile can do the same thing. Somebody from New Zealand or Australia or India or Pakistan, or anybody who's interested in protecting and want to feel like we have a sense of purpose and a sense of direction of how much can we protect.
Yeah, Andrew.
This is what makes it so powerful. Yeah, go ahead,
thanks.
Brendon.
And just on that note, I mean, I have to give a shout out to, since we've launched in New York 2 weeks ago or thereabouts, that is exactly what's happening. We've had almost 1,000 jot forms come in with people's interests from all over the world, individuals, companies, multinational interests. It's just fantastic, and it relates back. I guess if for the Joe blogs on the street, the OCC represents all the values of a square kilometer of ocean space, which you've named some of those. It's the environment, it's the species, it's the it's the resilience that's built in, it's the biodiversity uplift, all that sort of stuff. The people, and so that's when we talk about the value dimensions, that gave rise to this. But we all know, when you take it down to the simplest sort of way of explaining it, we all know as humans that the ocean out there has all these values. Just because we don't have an internationally agreed way of measuring them all just yet, doesn't mean that we shouldn't, appreciate the values that it actually has. And that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to, put some sort of value on saying, hey, just because we can't measure all those fancy things, whether it's the, carbon sequestration or, stuff like that, doesn't mean we all appreciate that the biodiversity, the environment, has a value. But we have to start somewhere. Yeah. And, the way we've built it is that, the MRV of this is that we will, over time, the value will increase because, those things will be able to be measured, and we will be able to report back to people of, what their contribution has done towards supporting it.
And this revitalizes the hope that people can have, because the big call to action, and Brendon and Mael, this, like the big call to action when we talk about conservation is vote for governments that will do more conservation, right? Vote for governments that will want to protect the ocean, that will want to reduce climate. And we have certain powers in many of the countries who practice democracy. You have certain powers to elect a government that has it, but that's restricted in certain ways. If enough people want to get a different government or a different party in the government, you may not have as much choice. Here, this gives you that personal choice to support conservation, right? By donating it with your dollar, and knowing there's going to be people at the other end, organizations and governments and so forth, who are going to put the work in to protect this area. And by essence, you're helping save the ocean. And you have that sense. You're like, I have hope now because I have control where I want to put my money towards a great cause. And I think this is one of those causes, is to be like, hey, we can do this. I mean, think about how much classrooms raise. In terms of like, they want to do something for conservation. They can raise the $250 New Zealand to help support that protection of 1 square kilometer. Like, this is game changing, and I can't believe this hasn't been done before. But I love I'm super excited about this, and I want people in the audience to know, like, this is going to happen, and people can support this cause. And they can support this effort to do this, and I think it's just a great way. Now, to set it all up, it's easy to say we're going to do this, but to set it all up, it's a difficult process. It can be complex. Brendon, can you talk about what it was like to get this program running? And I think you're still working to get the program running, right?
Yes. So we had hoped to have the whole system go live 2 weeks ago, but we're down to the wire. We have one more small technical issue that we require, and that is just to get a little bit of stuff that needs the OCC website become
Right.
active. I should say though, while I have the chance, also is that just off the back of your last comments, the power for individuals, for whoever, the government of Niue has recognized that as well, and they've got skin in the game. They have contributed one OCC for every man, woman, and child on the island. So, So they've put up the funds to sponsor one for every 1,700, almost 1,700 people. I think it's 1,681, the exact count. So they've put that up, but we also had our own people in the consultations that we've had. They've said, hey, don't open it up straight away. Reserve some of the OCCs for Niueans. So we've already
Right.
got an arm length of list of peoples and small businesses here that have that put in and pledged their OCCs already. The platform, as you said, it's taken a while to set up. It uses blockchain
Right.
technology. It's going to work. It's literally, hopefully in the next 24 hours, but maybe in the next couple of days. It's state of the art. It has all the securities that people will require it to have. We're almost ready to go. The beauty too is that you can, through that process, you can gift these to your children or to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to mint your own certificate, so you don't. It's not a tradable commodity, but you can hang your certificate up,
Right.
or a classroom, as you said. So
It's a thing of pride, right?
It's a feel-good moment.
An item of pride.
It is
for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, the last thing I just wanted to say is that the other valuable thing about the model that's being developed together with our partners in BNA in this part of it is that it can be replicated in other small island developing states. And already after the launch, we have countries coming up to us. They're really interested in doing this. So, if all goes well, if all the planets align, we hope that the OCC will be able to be used in other places as well, because it really is a game-changing opportunity.
Mael, sorry, you want to add something?
Yeah, just wanted to echo Brendon's recognition of the incredible leadership of its government, of U.S. government, because it just not through the OCC, it goes way back through the Niue Ocean Wide Project, couple of years of being committed to move forward. And so all of this been possible also because you have a government that has got skin in the game and that is involved through this partnership with Sophie and Niue. And so this is a very collective effort. The feel-good thing about the ocean conservation commitment, one, not only you and I can get some, and you know what, I'm going to get for Christmas, I'm going to get some for my daughter and my wife and myself. I'll be super happy to have those kind of things,
sure.
that sponsorship. But the thing is that we need also to emphasize is that, you talked about democratizing that. And so that means like bringing this back also in the power of people, of everyone, you and I. But that means that we also at the same level as, big foundations, major donors, and private sectors that also can contribute to OCCs and potentially at bigger scale. They potentially have the means and resources, and that's what we are counting on as well. Conservation International, the Blue Nature Alliance, and others have already also committed to support a quite significant amount of OCCs. And so that's what's great about it, is that actually we are tapping into every single source that we can to actually capitalize and get that, dynamic support to ocean conservation in a way that is very, again, equitable, accessible to everyone, and scalable.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, because if you just think about it, before, when we do conservation, a small island developing state is, we're all dependent on a specific somebody donating a large amount of money in the past, right? That was what it was. And that sometimes would only be for a certain amount of time, a finite amount of time, and it may not be enough to pay for the taking care of that area for a long period of time. Here we're opening up to a lot of people to support this initiative, and for 20 years at a time. And so I just think, this just allows for more people to put their money where they want, and be able to support like great causes like this and ensure that conservation is happening all the time. I love this idea. So Brendon, why don't you just kind of let people know, like, I know probably by the time we publish this, the website will be up. So I'll link to it once it's up, and I'll put a little note to say that it's up, that people can open up and support this cause. But how does it work? So somebody will go on the website and they are just able to click and put in the amount that they want to support?
Yes, that's right. They'll be able to do that. They'll be able to either sponsor an OCC. People can just go online. They can sponsor an OCC. They'll be able to choose how many, up to a certain number. If you exceed 1,000 OCCs, if there are corporates out there or philanthropies that want to contribute to that, then we have some filters in place to make sure that we are, receiving from reputable contributors, and we will reach out to you and process those manually, so that there is a grant agreement or grant funding arrangement that meets all the requirements of those. So but for any under that, you can just do it all online. We will utilize PayPal or direct credit card processing online, and you can mint your certificates for whoever you want. So basically, you'll get a nice little certificate, and you can put your children's name, your own name, your company name on it.
I love it.
It's great.
This is a game changer. I'm saying this right now. This is a game changer, and I love the idea. Such a huge idea coming from a smaller island, right? That a lot of people are unfamiliar with, including myself. So I just think that this is going to go down in history as a big game changer, and I love it. We'll put all the links that you've provided us in the show notes so that people can get access to it. And for those of you who are, let me know. I want to hear from you. What you did and how much you supported and donated and how you feel about it, because that's going to be fun. I know there's going to be a lot of certificates in my household. Let's just be honest. If this is going to be a lot of fun. But I just think it's great to hear these programs and this innovation is happening, especially part of the Blue Nature Alliance, especially part of such an amazing island like the island of Nuie. I think it's just going to be a lot of fun to follow, and I'd love to invite both of you back on to kind of get an update in a little bit to find out how it's going, and if we've reached our maximum and where it's going to go from there. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about that soon.
Well, we're excited.
I think that will be.
We're
fun.
excited too, and as you say, there are limited, so there's only 127,000 OCCs out there. So if you want yours. One, just a little plug, get in there and get yours. You'll be part of an elite few of in the world that have contributed towards supporting ocean conservation. So
Yeah, and one of the first
yes, that's right.
Worldwide too. Like if you think about it, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the important thing, that delivers in a timely manner for such a broad range of conservation efforts across so many different important protections, environment, species.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you name it.
You know something that I would like just to share is that we are sharing the excitement here and all the good thing about it. you have to know that it's been like a 2 years and brutal 2 years and a half of development and meetings and such a commitment from Brendon and Coral and other people from the government and our partners as well, McKinsey and DevDocs and Ripple, that actually helped develop the whole architecture and structure. I mean, it's been a journey, and now we feel like, we're reaching the end of that journey just to begin another one, and it's super exciting. But making the point that like if there's a lot of efforts and a lot of people actually putting this together, so this is something serious, and so this is something that works. So I want to acknowledge everyone's efforts and supports to make this a reality. It is very exciting.
Absolutely.
Oh, and this,
absolutely.
Sorry, go
absolutely,
ahead.
Mael, and as you said, the government's underpinning support of all of this has been just fantastic. The Premier, Dalton Tangalangi, Minister Mana Inu, many before them, but those two in particular have followed through with the government commitment for the last 6 to 8 years in various political roles. So I'd like just to reach out to them as well. It is really has been a journey for us, 6 to 8 years now of putting this all together, and to see something like this come about now is gives us the energy to keep moving forward. But this is really where the rubber meets the road, I think, because it starts to affect the lives and livelihoods, the protection for people, and our people, our communities have been waiting for this. We've promised them that it's coming. They've had to wait, but now they will see stuff being done on the ground, and we hope to report that back to all the sponsors and contributors, so they'll hopefully get those stories from our people, of what has been achieved through their sponsorship and donations.
Love the idea, and I want to thank you so much. I feel very honored that you've come on the podcast and you've shared this with me, and I had the opportunity to ask you a number of questions about the program, about the ocean conservation commitments, and be able to share it with this audience. It's been a definite honor for me to have you on. Definitely acknowledge all the work everybody has put in, and it's just amazing to be able to be at this point. Even though I'm just coming in at this point, to be able to be like, okay, let's get this started, let's get this going, and let's see where it's going. But it's definitely just the middle part of the journey. You guys have put a lot of work in this, and I appreciate all of it, and I know the people in the audience appreciate it as well. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing this with us and giving us all the information. We'd love, again, like I said, we'd love to have you back on and discuss more and updates on where we're at and what we can do to help. Again, thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much. It's been a privilege being on your podcast program. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Always a pleasure. And count me in for the next time.
Absolutely. I can't wait. Thank you, Mael and Brendon, for joining us on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to have you on. I think this is a huge game changer. Ocean conservation commitments will change the game in the way we fund marine protected areas in the future. Imagine taking that power that governments or foundations have to fund marine protected areas and put them in the hands of the people who say, you know what, I want to help. I want to be able to, put the protection in my hands. I want to say, I want this area protected. I want to help commit to that, and I want to help support that. And then I'm able to do it. I'm able to do it just by a click of the button, right? By donating $148 American that will last a number of years to be able to protect a specific area, to allow a government to be able to afford and ensure that enforcement and management and all that wonderful stuff that goes along with marine protected areas is able to be done. That's what I love about ocean conservation commitments. It's a very innovative program. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, it's very similar to adopt an animal. This is adopt an area, and we want to make sure that we can support areas all around the world. And just imagine the power it allows people to do. There are 8 billion people on the planet, and probably more than that by now, and we can actually have an effect on a marine protected area and make sure that it's funded properly. That would be absolutely amazing. Wonderful idea, and I'd love to see this happen, and I'll be promoting it on this episode, on this podcast for the future. So if you want to be able to donate and support this initiative, you can go to speakupforblue.com/OCC for Ocean Conservation Commitments. So that's speakupforblue.com/OCC to see if you can get access to your 1 square kilometer. Let me know how that went. I would love to hear what you did and how all that was going. Please let me know. You can DM me on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean, at How to Protect the Ocean on Instagram. And then, of course, you can access the contact page by going to speakupforblue.com/contact, and then you can fill out the form, and boom, you're all there. It goes right to my email. Or if you want to leave me a voice message to show me how excited you are in your voice, you can do so by going to speakupforblue.com. And at the bottom on the right hand of the page, there's a little microphone. Click that and you're ready to go, and I will listen to your message. But other than that, I want to thank Mael. I want to thank Brendon for their efforts, for coming on the podcast and letting us know. Looking forward to having them back on to hear more about this project and how it's going. And I want to thank you for listening to this podcast each and every time I publish. I really appreciate you, and I just think it's amazing. It's amazing to be able to have the ability to speak to you, and I love, of course, want to hear from you. So hit me up on any of the contacts I just made. So thank you very much for joining us today on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. Talk to you next time, and happy conservation.